first one, now keep in mind, I was probably only 7 years old.
Okay.
So where we live, there's a lot of different, there's a majority Native American tribe.
There's a lot of Native American history.
There's a lot of Native American history in where we live, and there's a lot of different sects of that. I mean, it's not, they weren't all part of the same tribe. There's a lot of different, I mean, just like we are today. I mean, there's cities and there's towns. I mean, so anyways, I was staying at my aunt's house. Like I said, I was about 7 years old, and I had no idea at the time, but my cousin and I, for whatever reason, I was staying at my aunt's house it was out in the country, and we woke up and we both saw a Native American person come in, and my other cousin was sleeping on the couch, and it was like they lifted it. We saw this Native American come in and lift what looked like his spirit and walk out of the house, and then come to find out later, up the hill was a Native American burial ground. What that was, don't know. I was 7 years old, could have been making that up in my head, and my cousin that was a year younger than me could have been making it up too. Just went along with it.
So when you and your cousin had the conversation later, did either of you lead in with what you saw, or was it like a...
It was me, because my cousin, so I was 7 years old and my cousin was 6, and so I asked him, did you see that? And he said yes.
And so that was like you took that as he saw what you saw.
Yes.
But did you guys have a detailed conversation afterward about what they saw?
As detailed as 7-year-old, I mean, basically described what I saw.
Okay.
So that was one thing. Again, like I said, I'm not saying that was real. I was 7 years old. Could have been. I mean, obviously, at that age, your mind is very active.
What was your feeling at the time, to your memory, like when you saw this happen? Was it, I was scared? It was, like, what was your...
We didn't have a scared feeling, or I didn't have a scared feeling until we saw what looked like it was picking up my other cousin's spirit and then walking away. Because it was the Native American cradled my cousin's, because my cousin...
Did it look like your cousin, or did
my
it look
cousin's,
like a
so my
kid,
so that's kind of what it looked like. But the Native American looked pretty much like I'm talking to you. Pretty close.
Like, whoa. Yes. Like how Native American looking?
Well, I mean, wearing a leather outfit.
very easily tell it was a Native American person. Okay.
Yeah. The face that had face. The person or the male had face paint. It was a male.
Okay.
Anyways, just 100 yards up the hill was a old Native American burial ground, and I didn't know about that.
So how did you come to find that out?
Because we told my cousin, I told my aunt about the story the next day, and she said there is, come to find out that there is a documented Native American burial ground about 100 yards up the hill from where.
What did you feel like was going on? I know you were 7, but in retrospect, what did you feel like was going on?
Honestly, I had no idea. It just happened, and it was shocking. And as a child, other than hearing some.
You have very limited understanding of what would be.
Yeah, limited experience, but at the same time, that was the only time I ever experienced anything like that. Actually, ever in life. I've never experienced it since. I don't know. It was strange, and like I said, it could have been just 7, and your imagination's running wild.
So, but when you think back on it as an adult now, what type of feeling does it give you? Like that was a paranormal situation.
Yeah, I felt that. I still kind of feel. I kind of still feel it was a real experience since my cousin saw it too.
Right.
Because he came out and saw it.
Yeah. Have you talked to your cousin as adults about?
No, I've never talked to him.
Interesting.
Okay, and then, so, the house that we lived up on the hill.
Second story.
Yeah, so this is the second story. So the house we lived up on the hill, this wasn't necessarily spooky, it was just lights. And so, there was...
So, to paint the picture for folks, you lived on a old logging... what do you want to call it? Landing, like it's the big flat spot of where a logging operation had once been, and they built a house.
My parents bought a logging operation, and then previous to that, there was a mining operation
Okay, and so the house was built on the flat of where all this activity had taken place.
So there's a valley that you and I grew up in. There's a valley there, in a little tiny town, about 4,000 people. And then we lived up in the hills, about halfway up the hill.
Overlooking the town on an old...
It was an old logging site, and then before that, like I said, it was a mining site.
So it was again, just to paint the picture so everyone understands, you're overlooking the town and you are on a flat spot that was carved out of the mountain through mining and through logging operations. So the trees are now gone, the ground has been flattened, and there's now a house overlooking from the mountain.
It was replanted, but there was, at that point, there probably wasn't a tree over 5 or 6 feet.
Right, okay.
Okay.
And so you're a youth growing up in this area.
Well, I mean a teenager at that point.
Okay.
And actually the first experience was, you were there too.
Okay.
And so we were in what we called the playroom, kind of, which was just a TV and I think a PlayStation.
A computer
we were sitting in there.
A cabinet and a couch, yeah.
And someone was shining lights in our windows, like a flashlight.
Yeah.
But you and I went out and we looked and there's nobody out there. Now, could there have been somebody? I don't know.
Right.
And then maybe a year or two after that, I was dating my current wife.
Right.
And we pulled up and...
Not pulled out. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I got 2 kids and 1 on the way. So, wasn't very successful.
Pulled up, not pulled out.
So, my wife and I, well, my girlfriend at the time, we were on a date and we pulled up to our house and we were sitting there and, we're making out, let's be honest.
Right.
So I was getting ready to exit the vehicle and there was not just like a flashlight, but like a floodlight shine in her car, but from the opposite side of where the house was at. So it wasn't coming from the house.
So if there was let's say a wooded area, was it coming from a wooded area?
Yes.
Like you wouldn't be able to
But again,
tell.
Those trees were only like 6 feet tall.
Right.
And
so you should have saw a figure there if there was a figure there.
Not only that, there's a clearing. I mean, because there's the driveway and there's a big clearing, so you should have seen somebody that was standing there, because I walked the perimeter, and then when I got back inside...
So was this an orb of light, or somebody had like a spotlight?
No, it was like a spotlight.
Okay.
So I went in and asked all my family members if they had sseen anything, or if they did anything, like if they were messing with us, because I have an older brother that liked to mess with us a little bit.
Right.
And they hadn't seen anything. Now, to go to the orbs of light, so I've seen an orb of light twice, and it was just like a white ball, essentially, just floating in the sky. I mean, not even floating, it didn't move. It just was in the sky. Because I originally attributed it to just flares, but it wasn't a flare because it never went away. It was like 45 minutes before it disappeared.
So did it like illuminate everything around you, or you just saw
it just was a ball of light.
Okay.
And it wasn't a big ball of light. I mean, if I had to guess, it was probably 2 feet in diameter. It wasn't huge.
So 2 feet, but off in the distance.
Yeah, it was probably maybe half mile away.
Okay.
Maybe a mile at the most.
Right.
And then kind of my last experience was I saw a ball of, it was blue, like a light blue, kind of like an LED light kind of. It came from the sky and then went down. So we sit up on a flat, and in front of us is kind of a forest, but again, it's not a very big forest because it was replanted.
Right.
So it's only 6 feet tall, but I saw a ball of blue light fly into the ground, and that was probably about a mile away. But it was very slow, so it wasn't like a meteor or anything like that. It just
like
was
a slow
ball
moving light that
and
went down.
And then it went down in front of us, between us and the town, essentially, because we probably only lived 2 miles from the town.
Was there any finality to it? Like it?
Nope, it just was a ball
just there
of blue light, and then it went to the ground, or into the trees, and then disappeared. And I talked to my mom about that later, and she said that because my brother and I shared the same room, he was in the room before me, and he had seen the same thing.
And your mom's a very religious person, so probably not wanting to believe in the paranormal and things of that sort.
Well, not necessarily. I think she believes in spirits and stuff like that.
But she wouldn't be one that would think automatically like, oh, my kid just saw a ghost and like plant that in your head.
No, I'm not saying it was a ghost. It just was something strange.
That you can't explain.
Yeah. And then